Hello everyone, this is Peter Fray with Platform9 Systems. I am the field CTO here at Platform9 Systems, and today I'm going to talk to you about how Platform9 can help you manage the in-store compute at the retail edge, specifically managing Kubernetes at remote locations. Our customers are telling us that they have in-store compute and they would like to manage each of these stores in-store compute locations centrally managed, right? They don't want to have technical resources spread across the United States or even the globe. So they're looking for a solution that will allow them to manage all of their in-store compute and manage it from a central location, regardless of whether they have 5 stores, 50 stores, 1,000 stores, or 20,000 stores. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk to you about how Platform9, you can leverage Platform9 with our control plane, right? And that control plane, you can then kick off a deployment of a bare metal server and how that will deploy in operating systems. And then from there, you can manage either a Kubernetes cluster or a OpenStack environment. And this is in a store's location. So we can manage all of these stores centrally from one location, boot all the in-store compute. And the nice thing about this is if we boot a server into an OpenStack environment today, and in 3 years we've decided that our corporate standard is Kubernetes, we can easily take and reboot that server into a new operating system. It might be a Ubuntu 20 or something newer, down the line in the future, and then we can boot it into a Kubernetes cluster, right? And then once it's booted into a cluster, we can kick back the control plane and then deploy applications into that location. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to demonstrate to you how we can leverage the Platform9 control plane, deploy bare metal to a physical server, deploy an Ubuntu 18.04 operating system, and then we're going to automatically attach that new physical server to an in-store compute in store 004 location. It's currently running a Kubernetes cluster with one master, and we're going to add one worker node to that. So we're going to physically scale some infrastructure in store. Okay, so I'll take just a minute here, and I'm going to switch to my Platform9 user interface. And right now I'm logged into Platform9. You can see that I've got multiple nodes available to me in my store's locations, right? And I'm going to kick off a quick bare metal deployment, okay? And we're going to deploy bare metal. I'm going to put a Bionic server, so that's Ubuntu 18.04. We're going to select flavor 1. A flavor is the t-shirt size. It matches the physical server characteristics of that box. So 32 vCPUs with 128 gig of RAM. We're going to put it on our provisioning network. I'm going to give it a name, store -004 K8-01-worker. I'm going to put my SSH key on there. Okay, and then I'm going to use a cloud initialization script. In this cloud initialization script, we're going to leverage the Platform9 CLI. So we're gonna boot this box. We're gonna set a default password in case SSH doesn't work for whatever reason, and then we're gonna grow our root partition to use the maximum amount of space. And then after that, what we're going to do is we're gonna run a number of shell commands here. The first one is we're going to do a curl and get the Platform9 CLI. The second one is we're going to make that executable. The third one is we're going to set that account URL to the se.platform9.horse and some login stuff so that it knows which Platform9 control plane to talk to. Then what we're going to do is a Platform9 CTL cluster prep node for the local host. What that's going to do is it's going to boot the box. It's going to then configure the OS for all the necessary configurations in order to run Kubernetes on top of this box. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to attach this node as a worker to the store 004 Kubernetes cluster. So let me kick that off. I'm going to click Finish, create the instance. Okay. what's happening now is we are now booting this guy up. It's got no IP address here, and if you watch the box over here, this is my IPMI into that node. You're going to see it go through a number of iterations. It's going to power on, it's going to boot. It will then, if I go to bare metal setup here, you can see that this is in a deploying state, and in just a second here it'll move from powered off to powered on, and we'll see that this guy actually boots. There we go. We can see it's now starting to actually perform the initial boot of the box. It's going to boot this server into Core OS, and then it's going to configure, do a DD of the OS image and bring it down into the server, and then on the next boot it's going to boot directly into the Ubuntu 18.04 that I selected. So it's already starting that process. We'll let it continue and we'll watch that. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my US West region in the Platform9 UI. So remember, this is one UI to manage OpenStack or Kubernetes or bare metal resources. I'm going to use our new user interface. And what you're going to see here is, you know, from my dashboard perspective, this will take just a second to load. It'll tell me the total number of clusters I've got, total number of nodes, the number of pods, cloud accounts, number of users, etc. So you can see the data is starting to populate from our API now. So I've got 4 Kubernetes clusters. They're healthy, and we're going to take a look at those right now. So if I go to my infrastructure tab, you can see I've got store 001, 002, 003, and then ultimately this store 004 here. And he's running Ubuntu 1.18.10, right? So, but if I look at him, he's currently got, if I look at the node health, one single node inside of there. So he's a master and a worker running on a single node. He's currently deployed and healthy, right? And you can see all the deployment steps that we did here in order to boot this all the way up, including Calico, and et cetera, et cetera. So this Kubernetes cluster is actually up and running. It is running in my store 4 location back at the Platform9 lab. And in a few seconds here, a few minutes, you're going to see that this server is going to continue to boot. It's going to boot into Ubuntu 18.04, and ultimately what's going to happen is it's going to automatically attach to store 004. The idea is that we're managing this Kubernetes cluster. It's being done remotely. I've taken bare metal that may have just been installed inside the store and deployed an OS and automatically attached it to a Kubernetes cluster. In effect, I just scaled a bare metal server at a remote location by leveraging only the Platform9 user interface. While that's happening, I'll just walk you through some of the UI here a little bit, right? So I'm sort of on my infrastructure tab here, showing you all my different Kubernetes clusters. One of the things that's very powerful about Platform9 is I can take, you know, a store like this one right here is running 117.9. I get all the different versions of Kubernetes that are out there. But if I want to upgrade this guy, I can come in and say, all right, I want to take store 003 and move them from 117.9 of Kubernetes to 118.10. You do that by selecting the Kubernetes cluster. Each of these Kubernetes clusters are named after the store that they reside in. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and upgrade the store 003 Kubernetes cluster, which is in store 003 location. And you can see I click the upgrade button, and this will tell me it's going to upgrade from 117.9 to 118.10 of Kubernetes. I'm going to confirm that. Okay, and as soon as I do that, what's happening in the background is now this Kubernetes cluster is going into an upgrade mode. What's happening here is store 003 is moving, like I said, from 117.9 to 118.10, and it's going to take the master nodes, it's going to cordon one of them, evacuate all the pods, upgrade it to 118, bring that master node back online. And then it's ultimately going to cycle through each of the master nodes that this cluster might have, and reboot and do master node 1, do master node 2, and then do master node 3. Ultimately, the end result is all the master nodes will be upgraded, and then it'll start cycling through the worker nodes one at a time. Okay, it looks like now this server's going into its final reboot here and should boot into the Ubuntu 16.04 and ultimately attach to that Kubernetes cluster. So let's take a look what's going on from our Ironic dashboard, right? So go back to Ironic. And then what I'm going to do is look at my deployed bare metal. Okay, and you can see that this guy is currently getting IP address 10.128.237.205. Okay, and as soon as he boots all the way up here, we should see him attached to that Kubernetes cluster. You can see that 3 of these are powered on right now, and one of them is this server that we're actually watching boot here. Okay, as soon as it completes its boot, it'll actually run that cloud initialization script that I pasted in there, and it will then, here we go, store 004 K801 worker node login prompt. So now this guy is now actively executing on the cloud initialization script. So let's go check on the Kubernetes side and see if it's attached yet. Okay, and I'm just going to go to my infrastructure here, and I'm going to go to my nodes tab here in just a second. Okay, you see one's in a converging state. That's good news, right? So if I take a look at this Kubernetes cluster and I look at the nodes, I still have one here. Let's see if it's, yep. But if I go to nodes, right, so it's doing that prep node right now on that one. Let's do a refresh here. Nope, he hasn't finished the prep node just yet, so we'll give it a second. But you can now see store 004 K801 worker. It's in a converging state, right? So what that means is this actual node has attached to the Platform9 system. As soon as it completes its converging state, which is installing the Platform9 agents and host agent and deploying the Kubernetes role to it, looks like it just updated. Let's see if it's back at the cluster level now. Okay, store 004. Let's take a look at it. It now has 2 nodes attached to it. And if I start looking at the node health here, you can see that store 004 K worker 01 is in a waiting state. So what's happening now is it's actually downloading the appropriate packages from Platform9. It's going to make this a worker node, so it's going to have 14 steps here, or 13 steps, and ultimately here in a couple of minutes this should complete. So it's just waiting for the Kubernetes role to apply to this particular node. Now it's started step 1, which is generating the certificates. It's preparing the configuration. It's applying that Kubernetes role, and it's going to ultimately attach this guy to that Kubernetes cluster. Alright, now if you take a look, it looks like all 14 tasks have completed successfully, and we have now just scaled this Kubernetes cluster to have 2 nodes fully functional and ready to be used as a Kubernetes cluster. The cool thing is let me talk about what we just did here. I'll go to here and present this as my last slide. So what we did is we logged in through our single user interface. I managed the metal there. I deployed an OS to a physical server in my remote in-store compute. I configured that for Ubuntu 18.04. We then deployed Kubernetes 1.18 on top of that, and we attached that physical server to an existing Kubernetes cluster inside of that store location. Thank you for your time today, and I look forward to talking to you guys again soon.